Greetings and welcome to a quick tutorial in HTML and JavaScript. There'll be a link below so you can go ahead and follow along with this. But there's two parts to this tutorial. The first one is using the select tag with JavaScript, and the second one is doing a little show hide where you can have everything hidden and then toggle only one of them on or off with JavaScript. So let me kind of explain what I have here first, and then we'll kind of go into the code and then make those modifications so you can see what's going on. So first of all, I have my select statement. It has it all set up with an ID of colors, and then I have options with a value of red. And we'll go over this in a little bit, but notice that it says red, but what matters is this value red. All right, and I'm going to show you how that works in a little bit. But that's the setup. So we have a little select statement here that shows up over here with values and an ID of colors. Then we have three H3s. I gave them all a class of hid for a couple reasons. One, so I can hide them right away. And then two, we're going to call that later in the JavaScript. And then there's two buttons, which we'll create a couple in a little bit as well, that we're going to use to show one. So when I click show, it should show the first one. When I click show 2, it should hide everything and show the second one. So again, we'll show you how to do that. That's the key piece. So the first thing is, how do we get the value and interact with a select statement, right? And on this case, we're gonna focus on change. So when they change this, how do we get it to do what I just did, right? How did it change the background with this? And we're going to make it so we actually get this value, so when we change it to a certain color, it will change it. All right, so that's the HTML and our CSS. Let's get with what JavaScript I have already. So hopefully you're watching the video, you already know how to get elements by ID, create functions, and do loops and whatnot. This is, again, focusing on interacting with a select statement and then how to do a little toggle JavaScript. So with that, we have our var color L. That's our color element, which is going to be this whole select statement. So document get element by ID colors. And then we're going to add an event listener to it. We're going to listen for a change. All right? We want to see when this changes. And then we're going to run the function change BG for change background. So we have our function, and then your standard document.body.style.background equals, I hard-coded pink for now, so you can see that that is working. But we're going to make it so it actually is based on this value. Well, we've already selected it. We're already listening for it. So if we delete this pink, we can get the value of it by doing color.colorL.value. So now as we go through this, you can see that it's grabbing this value, red, and then it's putting red right here, so therefore the whole background of the body is red. Now again, this is what I'm talking about. It's not actually grabbing this. Now these words are the same, but if I add a bunch of gibberish after them, it doesn't matter, right? It's grabbing this value. So whatever you put in here for the code we're using, it doesn't matter. So I'm going to fix that real quick, but I want to, again, it's the value that matters. When you get the value, this is where it comes from. So make sure when you're creating your select statement, you create your select statement correct. And that's it for select statements, right? If you wanted to get the value, you need to get the value of this. Again, now you could do it on a button press and get the value. It doesn't have to be on a change. You can listen to a different button or whatnot, or listen to something else. But again, like getting text from a text box, you have to get the value at the time of the event. Otherwise, it's going to get the value at the very beginning of the program. So if I have this document change the style and get the value, and I do it up here on line 25, that's not going to work. I mean, it'll be red because that's what the value of it is when it starts. So, and then it'll never change. It needs to be in this function. All right, so enough with the select statement. Let's go on to the toggle part of this little lesson, little tutorial, where we have all of these hidden, and then we're going to use these two buttons, and we'll create a couple more as we go along. We're going to use these buttons to toggle items on and forth. There's a bunch of different ways. We'll talk about some other things, but the main point is, and it doesn't matter what, you could have these as YouTube videos if you wanted to, whatever these items are, you just have them all. I gave them a class so that we can hide them right away, and then I'll show you some other reasons why I have it as a class as well. But again, it doesn't matter what the items are. They can be pictures, and if you wanted to, you could tie these two events together. Well, you can tie the select statement instead of a button, which actually will make a more efficient code. But I'll get into that as we go along. So again, have an ID of I1 for item 1, ID of I2 for item 2. This has an ID of S1 for show 1 and S2. So we've already done some code. Again, we got all of the elements. We grabbed all of these using our get elements by class name. I give a class, again, in this code I can use H3, but that's not normally preferable because you might have other H3s other places. So I gave it a class of hid, and we grabbed them all. And then I added an event listener to the first button. All right, to the first button, I've added an event listener. You'll also notice it is a click, but what I'm going to do, I need this anonymous function so that I can actually send something to the function I want to use. All right, if I don't have this function, this code will run right away because it already has the parentheses, right? That's how this works. This is normally how this should look, but that doesn't work because we want to send that, hey, I pressed 1, and I don't want to create 4 different functions or more, depending. Again, the whole point of what I'm going to show you is I can add more to this, and it's still going to work. More impressively, I'll talk about how to do this with a drop-down, and it'll save you less work. So let's go ahead and Control-Z this back so we have all of our code. So again, function, parentheses, and then just like regular function, you have your squiggly brackets, and then we call inside of that the show hide function. We send I1, which happens to be this ID name, which is very convenient. I'll have to show you in a little bit why I'm sending its ID, and then a semicolon because this is a whole JavaScript line of code, just all kind of wrapped into this function. So that is something unique I wanted to show you for this, is the ability to say, hey, I press this button, I can use just one function. In some cases, and we'll talk about other options, you can use if statements, but because I'm setting the ID, this is going to be pretty slick. Now let's go ahead and start adding some code to this function, and then we'll kind of build the rest of the code that we need for this. So the first thing I'm going to do is re-hide these. Now they're already hidden, but what I don't want to happen is when I click show 1, it'll show the first one, and then if I click show 2, the first one's still open and it's going to show 2, so now both of them are on. So the easiest way to fix this without a bunch of if statements and trying to figure it all out is just to go ahead and hide them all in the first place. So if we do for var I equals 0, semicolon, I is less than, and again, we already have all of the elements, so this allows us to have as many as we want. And let's go hid else dot length, semicolon, I plus plus, squiggly bracket, enter. And if you're following along, this should automatically be closing everything for you. And then all we need to do is hid else bracket I dot style dot display equals none, or whatever way you happen to be hiding it, visibility or anything like that. So that's going to hide it every single time. And it doesn't, because of this, I can add another one that's item 5 and keep adding it. It will just hide them all. Now here's kind of the beauty of this system that we're going to do, is we're going to show the element But because we have we're sending the ID to it, we don't really need an if statement. We don't need to say, if this is item 1, then show item 1. Now you can do that, and that is another option, which will also mean you wouldn't necessarily need to hide all of them every single time. And we'll talk about that. But let's go ahead and do this way. So document.get element by ID. And this is where we just type in item. All right, because we are sending I1 into item, and go down here, so it has the ID there. So that's a beauty as we're going to build some more of these buttons. What's going to happen? So dot style dot display equals, and again, block whatever you need to be in line, whatever you're trying to do, whatever display should be correct for you. But this will make it show up, and we should. Yep, there we go. All right. Right now, again, button 2 is not showing up, but button 1 makes it so it shows up. So to get the next one, we just copy this line, tab over, paste it, and then just because we already have good variables and IDs, I just change that to a 2, and this thing automatically saves and reruns. So when I click 1, 2, 1, 2, and again, it's just not changing that last letter. It's completely showing this one. Then when you click the next one, it hides everything, and then it shows this one. So now we see item 2 is because it hid everything, loop through all of them, hiding them, and then show. So even if I click on 2 again, technically it's hiding it, and then it's just redisplaying it based on our current code. But this is a very succinct piece of code, a very short piece of code, because the other concept I was talking about doing is, instead of doing this for loop and then having the ID be the thing, you could do something like, you could send item 1, and if item equals item, the variable, equals the parameter, equals item 1, the string, then should use the document blah 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 show item 1, and again this wouldn't be item, this would be actually its actual ID, and then you can hide the other 3. And then if it equals item 2, show item 2, hide the other 3. If it's item 3, show item 3, hide the other one. Which is okay, I guess, but what's really, really nice about this, I can just add more to this with next to no effort, right? So I just add this. I don't need to add any extra code other than I need to add some more buttons and then appropriately change them, which most of these buttons would have been added anyway. Should have been added anyway, rather. But now I have buttons to show all of them. Now I don't have event listeners for these right yet, but to fix that, we just copy this one and paste it 3 more times. And again, there's only a few spots where you have to change any code, and because we labeled these so well, we now have it. Now, here's the beauty of the code if you happen to use a select to do this. You can go ahead and only have one of these lines of code, because you'll get element by colors, right? You'll get the element, well, whatever the name of the select statement is, in my case it's colors. And then when you create this function here, what you'll need to do is this value here will be the ID. So this would be I1, this would be I2, I3, and then you can say item 1, item 2. And then when you get the value, you can send it. So this right here, that line of code, just replace with this, and then you're done, right? That's it. We take the color L value, because we have color L, so we take its value, the value of this, we stick it here instead of that. I'm not going to do this. This is almost the end of the tutorial. But if I were to do something like this, this would take all of that, and again, we'd add the event listener. This would be the event listener for colors, which we could just use color L's here because we already have it. But so if we listen to the select statement, we can do the show hide, grab whatever the value is, and if this was I1, then it would send I1, and this would still work. So anytime we change this, instead of changing the background color, it could show and hide. It'll hide everything and then show whatever one is selected. So whatever you're trying to do, that is how you use select statements. This is one way to do a show hide kind of toggle button rather. But we also mentioned how you can easily convert this to use a select statement. So that's about all I really want to go over in this short little tutorial. Hope it was useful to you. See you next lesson.